Hey everybody, welcome to Noby News in tiny microphones. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Coach Abby, Coach Logan. Again, I forgot to introduce us.
Between two tiny microphones.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sweet.
Yep.
So there is already a blog post about journaling. So if you'd like to go into more in depth about the specifics of why it's important and all that stuff, this is going to be more of a anecdotal.
Yeah.
Of our experiences with journaling.
Of experience.
So there's a relatable aspect to it as well.
Yes.
So
the journaling blog did go out in an earlier Noby News.
Mm-hmm.
If you saw it in there. So if not, reference our blog.
Reference the blog. Cool. So journaling. When did you start journaling?
When did I start journaling?
Yeah, I was.
Which time?
I was today. It was today days old.
Yeah.
When I started journaling.
Today years old.
Yeah.
I don't know which time.
When was the first time you ever tried journaling? And for what purpose?
I think probably I honestly don't really remember the first time I necessarily tried it. But maybe when I was in college. Actually, I did start doing like a little like daily gratitude journal where I had to write 3 things every morning when I woke up that I was grateful for, but I also had to include at least, I can't really remember if it was all things about myself, but at least one thing I'm pretty sure about myself. So practice on self-gratitude and also um, help me build my self-confidence, because back in the day there was none.
Mm-hmm.
So or it was in there, it was just hiding. So I did that, and that was pretty good. I had a pretty good time with that. It was like felt clear and structured, and gave me a clear objective to do, what to write about, and how to write it. So I found that to be helpful at the time.
Structured journaling.
Yes.
With outlines and guidelines of things that you should be writing about.
Right.
Rather than an open, whatever's going on in your mind, writing it out.
Yes.
Free form journaling.
I have tried that style of journaling. I don't know how many times. I don't know. Too many to count.
Yeah.
And every time I try it and I start it and I get really overwhelmed. And like have a hard time writing the thoughts without structuring perfect sentences or like making it make sense. Like I had a hard time. I think I gained the ability to freeform journal last year. So 2022, maybe in the summer. Just happened kind of all of a sudden for all these years of trying. But
nice.
Anyway, yeah, so I had a really hard time with that because part of the point is to allow the things that aren't making sense to come out of your brain. But when you are um, you have a hard time not being emotionally perfect and understanding and making sense of everything that's going on for you before it ever leaves your brain, then that's a hard process to do. So, yeah, we can go into that more later.
Cool. So starting.
How about you?
No. So synopsis of yourself.
Okay.
So you started off with a structured form of journaling, diary, whatever you want to call it, diarying, journaling, that allowed for you to have the exposure and opportunity to understand what it is, show a little bit of self-gratitude and grace for yourself.
Yeah.
And then with that experience and practice, made it a little bit more accessible to be able to go into the free form after several, what we'd say, failed attempts.
Yeah, I would say that they're not related for me.
No?
I don't think the ability to do the structured journaling is what actually helped me be able to do freeform journaling.
Okay. So what gave you the ability to be able to do freeform journaling?
Um,
or helped in the just doing it?
I mean, yeah, I think the effort of trying to do it enough times and like exposing myself to it enough times is definitely part of it. I've talked about it in therapy, like why I have a hard time with it, what about it is so difficult for me, and then also just maybe not maybe it's definitely like also I have gotten a lot more comfortable with the process of processing my emotions and how I'm feeling um, in a way that doesn't necessarily make sense right away. So,
Mhm.
like before, I wouldn't have been able to allow a thought that didn't even make sense go onto a piece of paper
Right.
before I was able to make sense of it and then put it on the piece of paper. So, definitely talking about it with friends as well, sharing my experience with other people who have found journaling to be helpful for them, and listening to how it's helped them and how they can access that level of freedom. Um, so, and now, and not necessarily having to tie an objective to it as well. Like, I feel a lot less like I have to make it make sense. I'm just journaling to get the thoughts out, not necessarily make sense of the thoughts. So I can like blurt it all onto paper and then leave it there and not. I can revisit it, but I don't have to. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that
Yes.
does make sense.
Yes. Emotional perfectionism.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So
Yes.
perfectionism. There's a
Just
longer video.
yeah.
We have that one.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
no,
that's a lot.
that makes sense. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking.
So being able to go through the process of expectation management, which is like an ideal for perfectionism, being able to not put too much pressure on yourself in a situation to allow yourself to actually get uncomfortable.
Yes, self
And
compassion.
but that is only the perspective of that moment that you're uncomfortable because you want that to be productive, and then you don't know it's productive until later rather than within the moment, and you're like, this
Right.
is gook, and
Yeah.
you're like, but that gook is important information depending on what perspective you have on it.
Right.
Cool. So freeform is a lot harder for you because of the expectations that you need to do it properly.
Yeah. When there's actually no proper way to do it, it could be whatever you need it to.
Yeah.
But for some, in which I would definitely tell other people, like this is definitely not an expectation I have of other people, um, or anything like that. But for myself, somehow, yeah, there's a way that I should be doing it, and I'm probably not quite doing it correctly.
Yeah. So stemming from self-compassion, looking at the lens of if you're your own friend and being able to take yourself to like a 10,000-foot view. I'm like, oh, would you tell that to yourself? Or what would you tell
Yeah.
yourself in that instance to be able to get yourself back
Yeah.
to what would be a realistic expectation?
Right. Yeah, it would definitely be a much softer um, perspective.
Yeah. Cool. So my experience with
Yes.
journaling, I guess.
Share with us.
Oh my gosh. So if you don't know me, my mind is going a million miles an hour all the time. Even if I'm quiet, it's usually because I am just thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I started journaling. Man, I was very young. Probably 6, 7, 6, something like that. If that probably makes sense to you.
Yeah.
That just being
Unsurprising.
have the ability to just write. So one of my favorite things when I was growing up as a kid was just typing. So
Mhm.
what it turned into was typing and journaling. So whatever it was on the old big mechanical keyboard, the one that had the floppy disks, and then your printer would kick out reams
Heck
of paper, and it
yeah.
was just tick, tick, tick. But so my actual freeform journaling or whatever it was at the time ended up turning into storytelling. So I would end up writing a story that was kind of what was going on in my life, and then that would help me not only kind of pull away from the character, but actually be the narrator for the characters, and then have a different perspective as I was actually going through and journaling it out, and then it just turned into a story.
Mm-hmm.
So there are many, many times where had teachers that were just because I was just talking about what I was thinking about would be a little bit cautious or worried because of the things that I would be writing about because they'd be
Mhm.
very vivid or they would be very adult.
Yeah.
Not to the point where it's like, well, this guy's crazy, but it's like, oh, you watch Forrest Gump and you saw Lieutenant Dan lose his legs. Well, let's write about that.
Hmm.
And they're like, oh, what's this a reference to? This guy lost his legs in war. This is crazy. How old are you? Okay. But for me, it was an ability or an opportunity to just let whatever's going on in my mind be released. And
Hmm.
then just have that opportunity to read through it, see it, sift through it, and then understand a little bit. Because if something's going so fast, you don't really have enough time to slow down and see what's going on. So just an opportunity to get it all out there and then zoom out and have a good
Hmm.
perspective on everything that I was thinking or going through or whatever it was at the time.
Hmm.
But it would either be typing, writing, whatever,
Hmm.
and then looking at myself in a non-judgment scenario, just like this is information, this is what's going on objectively, this is just information for me to sift through and understand who I am.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, how did you just like happen to discover that writing thing, writing the stories and writing out your thoughts was helpful, or like how do you remember how that started?
um I had a lot of self-talk as a kid, so just as a coping mechanism for myself to be able to stay grounded in reality, I'd be able to talk myself out of scenarios or situations that weren't ideal.
Hmm.
And then that just easily, it's in my head. So now just
Yeah, it just has to get out.
put it down.
Yeah.
So no different than just repeating the same thing or trying to remember what I was thinking, just have it written out. And then I
Hmm.
might not even reflect back to it until like many, many, many years later or whatever. But
Hmm.
yeah.
Neat. And then now, like, what is your do you journal now, and how is that the same or different from before?
Uh, I don't necessarily journal anymore. I'm able to partition my thoughts a little bit better. So I'm able to calm down, breathe. Not necessarily like meditative, but it is more mindful
Hmm.
for sure. Just allowing, not letting the thoughts overwhelm me or just flow like a fire hydrant.
Hmm.
It's more of, oh, here's the fire hydrant. Okay, let's learn how to use these crops to irrigate our field, kind of thing.
Hmm.
So just more of, I've learned to irrigate rather than just let it flood.
Yeah,
So.
all the metaphors. Yeah, nice. Um, Trying to think of any other questions.
I don't know. I think that
Yeah,
pretty much sums it up
yeah.
for this one. So my expression was more for I had so much information going on and I just needed to get it out. And Abby's was more of the limiter for herself was I need to do this perfectly.
Hmm. Yeah, I just put a lot of unnecessary pressure on myself.
Mm-hmm.
Story of my life.
Yeah.
Um, and I also was thinking about this when you were talking about storytelling. I also used to doodle all the time, which really gave me a real like a sense of groundedness. Pretty much any time I would doodle in class, I would doodle like anytime I felt like I was just not. Um, I don't know. I would doodle all the time. So I think that was also partially some form of expression that was not necessarily words, but really helpful for me in a lot of ways of just
Visual journaling.
yeah, right. And it didn't necessarily have any meaning to how I was feeling, but if I reflect on it now, I can understand that it was some kind of it was a soothing thing for me to do,
Mm-hmm.
and grounding for me to do, and also pass the time because all I wanted to do was play tennis.
Nice.
So, um, but yeah, so yeah, I journal. I don't know. I'm good for probably like once a month
Mm-hmm.
at this point. If I really feel like there's something I'm really like reflecting on and like heavily processing or just trying to figure it out, then I'll write it out. Day to day journaling is hard for me. That also puts a little bit of an expectation on myself of like you have to have something to write every day, and like that just doesn't feel like the right structure for me
Mm-hmm.
anymore. So, and like similarly, I can kind of like not get too overwhelmed by my thoughts, and I can have an easier time talking to people.
Yeah.
So not relying so much solely on myself to process all of the stuff. But trusting myself.
Yeah, journaling's
and-
helpful when you're definitely isolated too.
Mhm.
When you need to have a conversation with yourself.
Mhm.
If you don't have friends or anyone that actually aligns with who you are or has mutual experiences or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah, if you just don't feel safe,
Mhm.
you might as well feel safe with yourself.
Yeah, level of
So,
vulnerability that's a lot easier to express to
yeah.
yourself.
Yep.
Yep. Cool.
Yay.
All right. Let us know if you journal.
Yeah.
It's a very vulnerable one, but journaling, diarying, not
Yeah.
diarrheaing.
I definitely had a diary when I was younger too.
Yeah.
But that felt like I was supposed to have a diary.
Lock and
so
key. Because
yeah, for sure. It was just like, oh, that's what you do before you go to bed. But then I was like, wait, I just want to go to bed.
sleep.
So yeah. Anyway,
All right.
good
Comments
times.
below how you journal. If
Mhm.
this was helpful.
Yeah.
Thumbs up. Share it with your
Like and
journal
subscribe.
buddy. Like and subscribe.
Or don't like it if you didn't like this video.
Well, don't dislike it.
No, I just said don't like it. I didn't say dislike it.
Dang.
Don't feel obligated to like the video
Do whatever you
if
want.
it doesn't feel right.
You're a grown adult.
Yeah, it's okay. We understand.
Hmm.
Anyway, yeah. Noby News. Ow!
That's not your sign off.
No, it's not. All right, bye everybody.